This is In the Loop. I'm Christian Bryant. You already know what the big story is, so let's get into it. More protests and even stricter curfews tonight as we see an 8th straight day of demonstrations against police violence. New York City put in place a new curfew for each night through the end of the week. But it's not just the major cities that have seen protests, as demonstrators in towns big and small across the nation speak out for justice. In his first major speech to the public since the start of the protests, Joe Biden focused on a message of unity and acknowledging the pain felt by many protesters.
The country is crying out for leadership. Leadership that can unite us, leadership that brings us together, leadership that can recognize pain and deep grief of communities that have had a knee on their neck for a long time.
And as the lines get blurry between police and military action, lawmakers from both parties are looking to shut down a Pentagon program that sends military weapons and gear to U.S. police departments. Democratic Senator Brian Schatz of Hawaii says he'll attach an amendment to this year's defense policy bill to end the program. Republican Senator Rand Paul has expressed his support as well. The program was curbed to limit military gear in the hands of police by President Obama, but then started back up by President Trump. A lot has happened over the past week, which means some things are inevitably going to be overlooked. Unfortunately, the destruction from protests has gone beyond pepper spray and property damage. People have been killed during these demonstrations. Just since last week, that's included 3 people whose names we know. Chris Beatty, a 38-year-old black man and former Indiana University football player, was shot and killed in Indianapolis. James Scurlock, a 22-year-old black man, was shot and killed in Omaha after a fight with a bar owner. And David McAtee, a 53-year-old black man and restaurant owner, was shot and killed by law enforcement in Louisville Monday. The Louisville Metro Police Chief said someone shot at police and officers in National Guard returned fire, killing McAtee. That killing is under state, local, and federal investigation. In these protests the past few days, police have launched tear gas and rubber bullets and arrested thousands of people. Some of those people have been reporters. Now, typically journalists carry press badges and whatnot into these protests so they can show the public what's going on without fear of being targeted. But that precedent seems to have gone out of the window in many American cities over the past few days. Our open source investigator series, Newsy examined a couple of those incidents to bring new details to this crackdown on press freedom.
Protests have erupted across the U.S. in response to the killing of George Floyd by police. Many protesters have been tear-gassed or hit with rubber bullets. Thousands have been arrested. The stunning arrest of a CNN correspondent while covering the aftermath of protests in Minneapolis has drawn widespread criticism. But that was only the first major instance in what has now become a disturbing trend over the past few days.
I'm pressed!
As we see, that camera person just got shot.
And it's something that's more often seen in authoritarian regimes than in the U.S. Journalists covering the protests throughout the U.S. are increasingly finding themselves deliberately targeted by police with tear gas, rubber bullets,
Damn it!
pepper spray, or outright arrest. A running tally from our partners at Bellingcat has tracked over 100 cases of police abuse against journalists in the U.S. over the past few days. In this video, we're looking at video feeds, satellite imagery, and social media to break down the details of how police have been targeting the press. The first incident we'll look at takes place here, at the intersection of Nicollet and Franklin Ave in Minneapolis, around half an hour past the citywide curfew on Saturday. In the videos, as a column of protesters makes its way toward downtown Minneapolis, a convoy of police vehicles suddenly arrives and blocks the street, effectively splitting the protesters in two. A little over 30 seconds after they arrive, tear gas, rubber bullets, and at least one flashbang are all used as protesters scatter. WCCO cameraman Tom Avilas is positioned on the north side of the intersection. He's almost immediately struck by a less lethal round before retreating to a building corner. Despite identifying himself as press and wearing his credentials, he is first told by an approaching policeman to leave.
Go! Where do I go? with WCCO.
He asks where to go, but isn't told anywhere specific. He's then told to get on the ground and subsequently arrested. There are two more groups of journalists on the south side of the intersection. A reporter and cameraman from WCCO and an MSNBC crew with reporter Ali Velshi. Both are forced to move back as tear gas is fired in their direction. By this point, the street is mostly clear of protesters. Eventually, Velshi is interrupted while continuing his reporting and says he was hit in the leg by a rubber bullet.
Yeah, I got hit. Hold on.
The next morning, he tells MSNBC he was fired at again by a new group of police officers.
We yelled, "We're media." They responded, "We don't care," and they opened fire a second time.
A few blocks south of that, a group of journalists are filming a line of state police set up just to the south of the city's 5th Precinct building. The officers warn a crowd of protesters that they're violating curfew.
You are in violation of Minneapolis City Ordinance for curfew violation. Please disperse or you will be arrested.
Then, the line starts moving forward, firing tear gas as it goes. The protesters retreat back, but the reporters stay huddled against the wall. In order to force them to move, the police use pepper spray. The journalists then flee north and attempt to set up another staging spot on the street corner across from the protests. Police force them out of this location too.
What do you want me to do with this?
LA Times reporter Molly Hennessy Fisk is hit by a tear gas canister during the scuffle and can be seen scaling a wall to escape in a video from KSTP, whose reporters were also caught up in the tear gas. She ends up taking refuge in a nearby apartment building where she records this video.
We identified ourselves as press, and they fired tear gas canisters on us at point blank range. I got hit in the leg. I'll post a photo of that. I just wanted to get that on the record.
On the opposite side of the street, CNN cameras capture the same police advance. The network timestamps this footage at 8:45 local time. As before, reporters are forced to scatter under a hail of tear gas.
Dude, we gotta move back, fellas. Come on, come on.
One of the fleeing reporters is Omar Jimenez, the same CNN journalist who was arrested by police the day before. While this is happening, an MSNBC reporter and his crew are also forced to move back by police, in this case through a parking lot nearby. As the police push them back, a flashbang goes off in the area where they're being pushed.
Let's go.
These are only a few incidents in a single city. Protests have sprung up all throughout the United States, and along with them, assaults against members of the press. Not all are intentional, but in many cases, the journalists are well marked with press vests or video equipment. And while citywide curfew orders generally exempt members of the media, police have made little distinction between protesters and journalists and have generally created a dangerous environment for a free press.
When the president told governors they needed to dominate protesters, not every state leader was on board. We're breaking down the reaction next.
We're working remotely, but our mission hasn't changed.
Newsy's here for you.
Newsy is here for you.
From our living rooms.
And our kitchens.
24/7.
Focused on facts and not hype. Be informed.
Not influenced.
Isn't junk? You should know about Newsy's daily newsletter. It's breaking news right to your inbox. Get caught up quick with the best Newsy stories every day. Join us at signup.newsy.com. Be informed, not influenced.
President Trump has called for U.S. governors to toughen up when it comes to countering protesters, encouraging them to, quote, dominate and make arrests and try people and send them to jail for a long time. But not every governor has been following his lead, and some have even been vocal in their opposition to President Trump's directive. Newsy's Nathaniel Reed has the story.
Multiple days of protests in the nation's capital, leading to an ominous threat from President Trump.
If a city or state refuses to take the actions that are necessary to defend the life and property of their residents, then I will deploy the United States military and quickly solve the problem for them.
A governor could certainly invite the president to send in the military, but yes, the governor would probably look bad in doing so, and then the governor would cede control over his or her own state.
On Tuesday, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, whose state has experienced violent protests, said he has no plans to call for military help.
The president's scenario is a political prop. It's a political spin.
According to a senior official from the Defense Department, no governors have requested the presence of U.S. military forces to quell protests in their states. The president, however, retains jurisdiction over Washington, D.C., and can deploy military without waiting for the green light from the district's mayor.
We don't think that the active duty military should be used on American streets against Americans. Bringing in the military to do police work is inappropriate in any state in the United States of America without the consent of the governor, and it would be inappropriate in Washington, D.C.
According to the Defense Department official, a number of military police and other units have been deployed to the D.C. region and are staging just outside the district. Mayor Bowser said Tuesday she was concerned to learn the Pentagon had requested Virginia and Maryland to dispatch the National Guard to the capital region. In a statement, the chief of staff for Virginia's Democratic Governor Ralph Northam told Newsy they declined the request due to, quote, heightened concern based on the president's remarks that the administration is looking to use the Guard to escalate, not de-escalate, the situation. A spokesman for Maryland's Republican Governor Larry Hogan, however, confirmed the state had sent 116 members of its National Guard to help protect the nation's capital. Nathaniel Reed, Newsy, New York.
Social media has a pretty unique look today, in case you didn't notice. We'll dig into it next.
Native women have told me that what you do when you raise a daughter is you prepare her for what to do when she's raised, not if, but when.
Why are we different than every other person? Why don't we have the justice everybody else does?
You might have seen a lot of this on your timeline today. Don't worry, our cameras are still working. Black squares have taken over social media for something called Blackout Tuesday. It's a sign of solidarity with some deeper meaning behind it. Here's Casey Mendoza to explain.
There's a reason your Instagram feed looks like this right now. In support of the protests for racial justice, today is Blackout Tuesday. But what does that actually mean? With the hashtag, the show must be paused, the movement was started by music industry leaders Jamila Thomas and Brianna Ajiman. The two said in a statement, it is a day to take a beat for an honest, reflective, and productive conversation about what actions we need to collectively take to support the Black community. Following the call to action, music labels and tech companies like Spotify, Apple, Amazon, and YouTube announced they would be taking part by pausing all social media, promoting Black artists, and donating to groups like Color of Change and the official George Floyd Memorial Fund. Outside the music industry, Instagram users are participating in Blackout Tuesday by posting black squares, but many in the Black Lives Matter movement are saying the trend is counterproductive. That's because posts are being tagged with Black Lives Matter or BLM, hashtags used to promote resources and announcements.
Do not use the hashtag Black Lives Matter. Here's why. When people click on the Black Lives Matter hashtag, they're able to see resources, important information about the movement. If everybody posts black slates with the hashtag Black Lives Matter, guess what they see instead? This right here.
As of this reporting, the Blackout Tuesday movement on Instagram has over 18 million posts. Casey Mendoza, Newsy, Chicago.
Up next, some good news. Unless John Krasinski has that copyrighted now.
We're gonna go deep.
We drove across the state to get here. We're working hard to get you the news you need.
We dig a little deeper on the stories of the day.
That's why we're here.
To help start making sense of it all.
There are a lot of tragic stories around COVID-19 out there, but there are even more stories of recovery from the disease. And that's what this next piece focuses on. An ER nurse went through some rough days with the coronavirus and kept a video diary for us every step of the way. Here's her story.
I think I officially have all the symptoms. The respiratory symptoms are kicking in, so it's like I have everything.
The symptoms of COVID-19 can be mild or deadly, but for Jennifer Gill and many more, they're somewhere in between. Jennifer is an ER nurse who contracted COVID-19 and recovered. She sent us these daily video diaries, showing what both symptoms and recovery can look like. So we turned to an expert to review the videos and give us insight on this battle with COVID-19.
It is March 20th, and I would say day 0 of my quarantine. This whole week I've been feeling a little tired, not myself. They've been screening us before work, and I got flagged that I had a fever. I just got tested. I felt fine. I was able to sleep fine, no symptoms. Had, again, a little bit of a headache, nothing major.
I am Dr. Enid Neptune. I am a lung specialist from Johns Hopkins, and I work with patients who have COVID and are recovering from COVID. What you typically have initially, just a feeling of fatigue, a feeling that your muscle aches and pains, and that's because a virus encounters a normal immune system and is recognized as an invader. And the immune system kind of harnesses all of its kind of armamentarium to let your body know that it needs to fight this virus. What we've seen with COVID-19 is that first week is very much punctuated by those initial symptoms with either resolution or progression.
Day 2 of my quarantine, and I have to say that this is the first day that I feel pretty sick. I still have fevers, low-grade fevers, but I'm getting really bad body aches and intermittent headaches. I'm definitely coming down with something. This is not fun. I feel like I ran a marathon. Not that I ever ran a marathon, but I imagine that this is what it's like. The 23rd, and I feel like so bad. I had a fever on Friday. Now I have this terrible headache, stomach pain.
I think I officially have all the symptoms, so thinking that this is the flu, I'm suddenly now more convinced that it's not. Then the GI symptoms started.
Because of the way that the virus is spread, remember it's primarily spread through droplets, and you inhale droplets. And so when you inhale a droplet, it has kind of 2 options. It can go into the lungs, or it can go into your esophagus and your GI tract, to your stomach and your intestines. And that's why those are the organs that are particularly vulnerable to any type of environmental insult.
Yesterday was a good day. I had some energy back. I was feeling better, and today I feel like it was a setback. I got my results finally, and it is positive for COVID-19. I'm speaking low because my voice, and when I speak loud or if anything irritates it, I go into a coughing fit. I've lost my sense of taste and smell, which is quite weird. Having like a setback is scary.
The kind of interesting aspect of COVID-19 is that among those who actually feel that they're getting better, there's a subset that will have an effective relapse during the second week. So initially you have the involvement of the lining of your nose and your throat, and that's where you get the coughing and the throat tickle. And then as the virus progresses down into your lungs proper, into your airways, that's when you start having kind of this sense of shortness of breath. And as it kind of disperses further in your lungs, the shortness of breath can be associated with the reduction in your oxygen level. However, as we know, on day 9 and 2 days later, she started to feel better.
I'm finally feeling much better. My breathing's better. My shortness of breath is better. I just have a cough. No fever. I know I'm okay. But I hope that I'm able to help others. And let them know that they're not alone. You're not alone.
What's interesting, and I think one of the questions that you likely have is, why did she not progress when she did have this second escalation in her symptoms? One of the reasons is quite obvious. I mean, she's a young woman. And if she's young and also healthy, that means she doesn't have any known comorbidities like hypertension, like diabetes, like chronic lung disease. And so what we can think is that her immune system was fine-tuned enough to say, okay, we've done what we need to do. We can tamp her down, and we no longer have to kind of use all of the tools that we have in order to fight this virus.
Guys, I just got great news. I have the green light. You can't see me, but I'm smiling under here. I just got the green light to go back to work, and I am going to be heading back to work in just a few short hours. I'm so excited. It's been so long, and it was a very tough 2 weeks. But I'm better, and I'm doing good, and I don't have to worry about getting anyone sick.
I'm out for the night. Well, not out as in out of my home, but you know. I'll see you back here tomorrow night. Stick around here for more top stories from Newsy.